Let's talk about writing equations in slope-intercept form. Now, there's a few different situations that you'll come across. Today, we're going to talk about what if you're given the slope and the y-intercept. So some pretty basic entry-level writing of equations. Slope-intercept form is what we're asked to write our equation in. So I'm going to use y equals mx plus b. This is your slope-intercept form because it tells us our slope and it tells us our y-intercept. The coefficient on x is going to be your slope, and that constant added to the end is your y-intercept. So when I look at what they want me to write here, write the slope-intercept form of the equation of a line that has a slope of 2 and a y-intercept of 5. Well, I have the slope and I have the y-intercept, so I'm just going to put them in the places they belong in the equation. My slope is 2, so I'm going to put that where m is, and my y-intercept is 5, so I put that where b is. So I've got the equation y equals 2 times x plus my y-intercept, which is 5. I don't need to simplify anything here, so my equation is just y equals 2x plus 5. Let's do a couple more. So here we have a couple of points now. So we don't have the slope, but I do have a couple of points. They don't explicitly give me the y-intercept either, so I need to find that as well. But we have the same goal. We're trying to plug in the m and the b in my slope-intercept form. Something that we know about the y-intercept is that it is where your graph crosses the y-axis. So if I have a line, I'm looking for this point right here. That is where my graph crosses the y-axis. Something that we know about that point is that the x value will always be 0. So 0, comma, whatever that y-intercept is, I'll call it b. It's going to change from question to question. In this one, it looks like maybe it's at 2 or 3, but just to be general, I'll call it b. So if you have a point where your x value is 0, then the number with that is automatically where your graph hits the y-axis. So that's your y-intercept. So if I look at the point they give me the point 0, 1, which means that if this is the line, then that point on my y-axis is 0, 1, which means that my b is just 1. So now I just need to find my slope. So I'll go ahead and write my slope formula, and I will find my slope from the 2 points that they give me. My slope is found by creating a fraction where I subtract the y's on the top and the x's on the bottom. It doesn't really matter where you start, but once you decide where you're starting, we have to start there for the y's and for the x's. So I'm going to subtract my y's. I'll start with my second y, and then I'll subtract the first one. Since I decided I'm starting with the second y, I have to start with the second x on the bottom. You could start with your 1's, you could start with the first y, but then on the bottom you would have to start with the first x. So we have to be consistent. So I'll go ahead and plug my values into my formula. My second y is 4, and I'm going to subtract the first y, which is 1. So 4 minus 1. And then my second x, so I have to start from that second point. Second x is 2, and I subtract the first x, which is 0. 2 minus 0. 4 minus 1 is 3. 2 minus 0 is 2. So my slope is 3 over 2. So now I have my slope and my y-intercept. So I'm just going to plug them into my equation. Y equals, my slope is 3 over 2 times x plus my y-intercept, which is a positive 1. And again, there's nothing for me to simplify here, so my final equation is just 3 over 2x plus 1. One more example, and this one's a little bit different. This one talks about your equations in function form. So in this form, we need to extract our two ordered pairs. One thing that we know about functions is that the input is your x, and then whatever you get out is your y. So looking at these two, I see that my input of the first one, my x, is going to be 0, and the output is a negative 4, so that gives me my y. So this point is 0, negative 4. For the second one, that input inside the parentheses, my x is negative 3, and then the negative 2 is what we got out, and that gives me my y. So my second point is negative 3, negative 2. So I'm going to go through and do the same thing that we did on the last example. I know my b value automatically because looking at this point right here, the x value is 0. So that means that the -4 that's with that is my b value. So this b is -4. But now I need to find my slope. So I pull up my slope formula, and I will go ahead and calculate. I take my y's and subtract them. I'll start with the first y this time and subtract the second y. But on bottom, I have to start with the first x and subtract the second x. So starting with the first y, I'm going to start here and subtract the other y. So -4 minus, and then I have a -2. In the denominator, I have to start with that first x, which is 0, and I subtract my second x, which is -3. I have those two negatives next to each other on both the top and the bottom, so those just become pluses. So -4 plus 2 is -2 over 3. So my slope is -2/3. And now I just put it all together. Y equals, my slope is -2/3 times x plus my b value is a -4. This one I do need to simplify because I see that plus and that minus right next to each other. If you're ever adding a negative number, we just change that to subtraction. So my final equation is -2/3 x minus 4. We'll go one step further and we'll write this using function notation because we started with function notation. So this function, which is written in terms of x, is -2 over 3x minus 4. If you haven't learned functions yet, you can go ahead and leave it as y, but if you have, this is what it would look like with that function notation. Hope that helped. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.